Loss is not always a failure. Sometimes it is a disguise, a calculated mask you wear not to hide weakness, but to weaponize perception. Machiavelli understood that real power isn't about winning every visible battle. It's about positioning yourself so that the war bends to your will. And one of the most devastating ways to do that is to pretend to lose when everyone expects you to fight. Why? Because in the game of power, victory draws attention, but loss draws truth. When you win, people study your strength. When you lose, they expose their own. The psychology behind the feigned fall. Most people operate under a primitive rule. Dominance must be asserted constantly. They believe showing strength at all times is the only way to keep control. But this creates predictability, and predictability is exploitable. Pretending to lose at the right moment, in the right way, is a disruption of that pattern. It disarms your opponents. It lowers their guard. It invites arrogance, and arrogance blinds them. When they think you're losing, they stop hiding their weapons. They reveal alliances. They expose weaknesses. They make moves they would never make if they thought you were still dangerous. Machiavelli didn't call this losing. He called it inviting exposure. Why most people can't do this? Pretending to lose requires two traits most people don't have. 1. Emotional discipline, the ability to endure the sting of public perception without reacting. 2. Long-term vision, the ability to trade short-term dignity for long-term dominance. Most people will panic if they look like they're slipping. They'll rush to defend themselves, to reclaim status immediately. But the Machiavellian mind knows that the best opportunities often come when you allow your enemies to think they've beaten you. This is where the crowd's perception becomes your shield. The moment they believe you're finished, they stop fearing you. And when fear leaves the room, so does caution. The power of underestimation. Let's be clear. Pretending to lose is not about theatrics. It's about engineering a new frame in which you are no longer seen as a threat, and therefore no longer watched carefully. The underestimated player becomes invisible in plain sight. While your rivals celebrate your defeat, you gather intelligence, strengthen your position, and prepare the strike they'll never see coming. It's the wolf, limping away from the hunt, so the herd thinks it's safe. The limp is a lie. When to deploy the gambit? You can't fake a loss at any time. The move must be precise. Here are the moments when Machiavelli would have approved the gambit. 1. When your enemy is more powerful in the present moment, you cannot win the head-on battle now, so you make retreat look like collapse. 2. When you need to flush out hidden opposition, your loss will embolden silent rivals to reveal themselves. 3. When the cost of winning now outweighs the value, sometimes a small defeat buys you a much bigger victory later. 4. When you want to reshape the battlefield, by stepping back, you force others to fill the space, revealing new vulnerabilities. Case study in shadow. Form. Imagine you're in a leadership position. A rival wants your seat. They're pushing politically, trying to undermine your authority. Most people would fight tooth and nail to hold the position. The Machiavellian player might do the opposite. They might lose it. Step down voluntarily, publicly conceding the role, while quietly securing influence over those who now report to your rival. The rival celebrates. They feel untouchable. They expose their style of leadership. They take risks. They make enemies. And months later, when the environment turns against them, the one person everyone looks to as the stable, trusted option, is you. Your loss wasn't a loss. It was bait. The art of making loss look real. Pretending to lose requires mastery over appearances. If you look too calm, they'll suspect you're planning something. If you look too broken, you'll lose credibility. The sweet spot is subtle resignation. Enough for your rivals to believe the story without you actually believing it yourself. Language. Speak with acceptance, not bitterness. Body. Lower your posture slightly, but not into weakness. Just enough to signal you're done. Timing. Exit decisively. The faster you concede, the more convincing it appears. Remember, the goal is not to convince everyone, just the people whose guard you need lowered. The trap. They can't resist. The beauty of pretending to lose is that it flips the predator-prey dynamic without alerting anyone. When they believe you've been declawed, they come closer. They take bolder bites. And the closer they get, the more you learn. Not about them, but about the terrain, the politics, the fault lines you can use later. It's chess, not checkers. You're not sacrificing a pawn out of desperation. You're sacrificing it to open a line of attack that leads directly to the king. The emotional battle. You must win. First, the hardest part of this gambit is not pulling it off. It's living through the whispers. People will assume your fall is real. Allies may distance themselves. Enemies will celebrate. And you must sit in the center of that storm with the calm of someone who already knows the ending. If you can't stomach temporary humiliation, you can't play this game. If your ego needs constant validation, you will fail. Machiavelli's version of victory was slow, deliberate, and often invisible until the moment it became undeniable. And pretending to lose is one of the purest forms of that discipline. Because here's the truth. In power games, the one who can walk away from the battlefield without appearing to care is usually the one who chooses when the war ends. Pretending to lose is only the first step. If all you do is fall back and wait, you've gained nothing but distance. The true Machiavellian advantage comes in what you plant while you're defeated, because your fake loss is not an intermission. It's construction. It's the quiet building of a position so strong that when you return, no one will understand how you did it, only that it feels inevitable. Why silence alone isn't enough. People romanticize the idea of disappearing after a setback, imagining that absence alone makes them mysterious, even powerful. But absence without intention is just neglect. Machiavelli would never simply vanish. He would reposition. He would use the cover of his supposed defeat to move in ways no one was watching, forging alliances, controlling resources, and reframing his image without triggering alarms. Think of your fake loss as a cloak. You can walk anywhere with it on, and most people won't see you for what you really are. The 3 pillars of the shadow build. When you're pretending to lose, your time is divided into 3 essential moves. 1. Consolidate the loyal core, ocho. In times of perceived weakness, opportunists scatter. Let them. Oh, pay attention to who stays close. These are your true loyalists. Oh, strengthen your ties to them privately, not with grand gestures, but with deliberate trust. Exclusive information, small acts of protection, moments of personal connection. OEU, when you return to power, they will not just follow you, they will defend you. 2. Acquire the silent leverage. While rivals think you've lost influence, acquire the kind that doesn't need a title or a spotlight. This could be information, the kind that ruins a person if revealed. O. It could be financial control, subtle influence over resources others depend on. O. Or it could be network positioning, quiet relationships that allow you to open or close doors in someone's path. 3. Rewrite the frame in absence. O. Don't defend your image publicly. O. Instead, outgrow the narrative your enemies are pushing. O. If they say you're impulsive, let them say it. While your every move is slow, deliberate, and visibly calculated. The longer you maintain this quiet contradiction, the more their story about you begins to rot. The invisible offensive. Your rivals think you're rebuilding. You're not. You're redirecting. Instead of reclaiming the exact ground you lost, you build a new high ground entirely. You shift your arena so that by the time you emerge, they're standing on a battlefield that no longer matters. It's like allowing someone to win a castle, while you've been quietly taking the farmland, the trade routes, and the loyalty of the soldiers. By the time they realize the castle is worthless without what you control, it's too late. The psychological effect on your enemy. When someone believes they've beaten you, they begin to define themselves through that victory. It becomes part of their identity. I'm the one who took them down. This is the crack in the armor. When your identity is built on someone else's loss, it's inherently unstable. Because if that person rises again, your entire narrative collapses. This is why your eventual reappearance must be so controlled, so precise, that it's not just a return, it's a mirror held up to their pride. When the crowd sees you again, stronger, sharper, untouchable, the question becomes unavoidable. If they could come back from that, did they ever really lose? And if you didn't really lose, did your enemy ever really win? The subtle movements that go unnoticed. During your loss, every move you make must feel unremarkable in the moment, but significant in hindsight. Examples: a casual lunch with a minor figure who later turns out to control something critical. A small investment that nobody understands until the market turns. An introduction you arrange for two people who later become essential to your network. Individually, these actions look harmless. Together, they form the web that catches your rivals when the time is right. How to use time as a weapon. The most overlooked resource in power games isn't money, allies, or influence. It's time. When you fake a loss, you buy yourself time in 3 key ways. 1. You slow the game down, forcing your rivals to operate without the adrenaline of a visible opponent. 2. You let their weaknesses age. Bad habits, arrogance, and laziness grow in the absence of pressure. 3. You mature your advantage. Investments, relationships, and leverage all compound quietly. By the time you decide to return, the gap between your silent growth and their silent decay will be so wide that your win looks effortless. The trap of overplaying the role. There is a danger here. Stay in fake defeat too long, and people will start to write you out of the story entirely. Machiavelli would advise calibrating the arc. Step back visibly. Stay absent long enough for your rivals to relax and expose themselves. Reappear before your name loses its weight. The timing must feel like a surprise to them, but a natural progression to everyone else. The return must be a contradiction. When you come back, your re-entry must directly contradict the image they've built of you. If they painted you as desperate, return calm. If they framed you as irrelevant, return with undeniable impact. If they described you as reckless, return with a master plan that's clearly been in motion for months. The more their portrayal of you is proven false in front of the crowd, the more their credibility suffers. They don't just lose power, they lose trust. Closing the loop on the gambit. Pretending to lose is not a pause in the game. It's a sleight of hand. You step back, not to rest, but to reframe. You allow your enemies to relax into their own overconfidence, all while you prepare a return so clean, so calculated, that it feels less like a comeback and more like the next move in a game you were always winning. Because the truth is, you were never playing to win that round. You were playing to own the board. There is an art to pretending to lose, and it is not the sloppy theater of obvious capitulation. If you surrender too openly, you invite suspicion. If you bow too deeply, your adversary will smell the performance. The key is to make your loss believable, yet not humiliating. You must give the impression of a genuine miscalculation, a natural human failing, never an orchestrated act. True power games operate in the gray space between what appears to be reality and what is actually happening behind the curtain. Machiavelli himself understood this. People will forgive an error if it feels human, but they will retaliate if they sense manipulation. That is why your loss must taste authentic to their ego. Imagine you are in a corporate negotiation over a high-value contract. You push aggressively at first, then suddenly yield on a minor clause your rival seemed obsessed with. They leave believing they have scored a victory. What they don't see is that the clause was strategically worthless to you, and by letting it go, you have secured their emotional investment in closing the deal. Your false loss buys you the real win, the terms that matter. This is the theater of surrender. You hand them a sword made of paper and let them believe they have pierced your armor. You stage the scene so convincingly that they never look for the hidden knife in your other hand. But there is a deeper psychological reason why this works. Most people are addicted to the feeling of triumph. They want to believe they've beaten you because it feeds their sense of superiority. The moment they feel victorious, they stop guarding themselves. They share more information. They reveal vulnerabilities. They take bigger risks, all because they think the game is already over. Your task is to feed that illusion without letting it devour your actual position. Like a skilled actor, you modulate every gesture, every concession, to appear accidental rather than deliberate. You might sigh at the right moment, hesitate before signing. Let your eyes linger on a term you are reluctantly accepting. These are cues that tell your opponent, "You've got me." But in reality, you are drawing them deeper into your trap. There is a classic military example of this from ancient China, the empty city stratagem. A general, facing an overwhelming enemy force, opened the city gates and had his soldiers disguise themselves as civilians sweeping the streets. He even sat on the city wall playing a lute. The advancing army, suspecting a trap, retreated. The general's apparent vulnerability was an illusion crafted with precision. It wasn't just surrender. It was surrender so believable it turned the enemy's own caution against them. The modern battlefield is less bloody, but no less ruthless. In business, politics, personal rivalries, the same principle applies. You are not just giving something up. You are deciding what to give, how to give it, and what you expect in return. Every false loss must be tethered to a long-term gain. This is why Machiavelli warned that power is not built on constant victory. A ruler, or a player, who wins too often invites coalitions against them. When you pretend to lose, You diffuse that pressure. You allow others to underestimate you, to see you as fallible, even weak. And in doing so, you buy yourself space to maneuver. But beware, there is a fine line between playing weak and becoming weak. Pretending to lose is a strategy, not an identity. If you inhabit it for too long, you risk becoming the role you are playing. You must know exactly when to flip the switch, to reveal, at the decisive moment, that the game they thought they were winning was never theirs to begin with. The true masters of this gambit do not flaunt their eventual triumph. They let the opponent believe they still hold the upper hand, even as they sign the surrender papers that are, in truth, the terms of their own defeat. And in that moment, the opponent does not even realize they have lost, until it is far too late to recover. Pretending to lose is not a static tactic. It is a dance, and every dance depends on timing. Strike too early, and your opponent will suspect manipulation. Strike too late, and your false loss becomes a real one. In Machiavellian strategy, the moment you choose to fall is just as important as the way you fall. There is a hidden rhythm to every contest. At the start, both sides are alert, calculating, guarded. This is rarely the moment to surrender, unless you are deliberately trying to discourage an engagement altogether. Early losses can make you appear unprepared or weak, but if deployed without purpose, they only erode your credibility. The ideal moment often arrives after the first exchange of blows, whether verbal, political, financial, or psychological. By then, your opponent has invested in the battle. They have tested you, measured you, and begun to settle into a belief about your capabilities. This belief is your weapon. You must watch for the subtle signs that their confidence is peaking. Their tone shifts from cautious to condescending. They begin to make assumptions about your limitations. They lower their defenses and start sharing more than they should. They talk about when they win, not if they win. These are not just signs of arrogance. They are the cracks through which you will slide your knife. When their confidence crests, you give them the gift they are unconsciously begging for: validation of their superiority. You lose, convincingly. You let them believe the war is over. And that is when they make their most dangerous mistake. They stop fighting with the discipline that got them here. In poker, this is the player who wins a massive hand and then starts playing sloppier, chasing weaker cards because they can't lose. In business, it's the rival who secures one high-profile deal and then overextends themselves, leaving gaps in their armor. In politics, it's the opponent who humiliates you in public and then assumes you're finished, not realizing you're already weaving the threads of their downfall in the shadows. But even here, precision is everything. If you hand over your false loss before they are emotionally invested in the idea of winning, the impact is wasted. If you wait until after they've already begun to suspect a reversal, you'll trigger their suspicion before you've gained the full benefit of their overconfidence. Think of it like a hunter with a snare. You do not pull the rope when the prey first enters the trap. You wait until they've stepped fully into the center, until retreat is impossible. Then, and only then, do you let the illusion of safety vanish. Machiavelli wrote that it is better to be feared than loved, but in this gambit, you exploit the desire to be admired. Your opponent wants their victory over you to be a story they can tell. You give them that story, temporarily. You let them compose their narrative, rehearse their boasts, and parade their conquest. All the while, you are engineering the ending they never expected. There is another danger in timing: ego. Your own pride may demand an immediate response to an insult or a challenge. But in the Machiavellian frame, ego is the enemy of strategy. You are not here to win quickly. You are here to win completely. That means swallowing small humiliations if they serve the greater plan. Patience is your shield. Let them think you are licking your wounds. Let them believe the storm is past. And when you finally return, not with rage, but with inevitability, you will not need to fight hard. By the time they realize what is happening, the game will already be over. Some of history's greatest power shifts happened because someone mistimed this gambit. A general struck too soon and revealed his reserves before the enemy overextended. A CEO retaliated too fast against a competitor's move, alerting them to a counter-offensive before it could mature. In both cases, the illusion was shattered and the advantage lost. To master this tactic, you must develop a sense for psychological ripeness. That means reading people as closely as you read numbers or maps. Watch their body language, track their speech patterns, feel the moment their aggression shifts into complacency. That is your window. It may last only hours, sometimes minutes. If you miss it, you must have the discipline to wait for another. In this game, time is not measured by clocks, but by the heartbeat of your opponent's confidence. A false loss is not the end of the play. It is the bait. And bait without a trap is just a gift to your enemy. Once your opponent believes they've beaten you, their guard doesn't just drop, it disappears. They stop scanning for threats. They stop imagining you as a factor in their future. They start thinking out loud, making plans, and most importantly, taking risks they would have never taken while you were a visible danger. This is the moment you have been engineering from the start. The trap must be prepared long before the false loss is staged. You do not improvise it in the aftermath. You build it in the shadows while the contest is still alive. The seeds of their downfall must already be planted. An overlooked weakness in their network, a flaw in their process, a hidden dependency they have on you without realizing it. Your defeat must funnel them toward this vulnerability without them suspecting a thing. Think of it like leading prey toward a cliff edge. They believe they are chasing you away, but every step they take is a step into the place where you want them to stand when the ground gives way. The key is subtle steering. You cannot appear to guide them, or their suspicion will wake. Instead, you invite them to take actions they believe are entirely their own. They overexpand into territory they cannot hold. They invest heavily in a project that will fail without your cooperation. They trust an ally you have quietly turned into your agent. They make promises to others that you know they cannot keep. In war, this might mean letting an army occupy a seemingly strategic position, one that happens to be surrounded by high ground under your control. In politics, it might mean letting a rival take credit for a fragile policy you know will collapse under scrutiny. In business, it could mean handing over a contract you know will drain their resources faster than it generates returns. The more they believe they have won, the more they will build their future on the unstable foundation you've given them. And when the moment comes to act, you do not strike with noise or fury. The most devastating reversals are quiet. You do not attack their walls. You remove the ground beneath them. Here is the psychological principle at work. After a victory, people assume the world will keep rewarding the same behaviors that led to that victory. They repeat those behaviors blindly, even when the conditions have changed. This is why the false loss works. It tricks your opponent into repeating the exact moves that will destroy them. Your role, after the staged defeat, is to ensure those moves take them deeper into your snare. This requires restraint. Many fail here because they spring the trap too early, revealing their hand before the victim is fully committed. The master waits until retreat is impossible. When the collapse comes, it must feel to them like fate, not an attack. That way, they will never be sure whether you were even involved. The best trap is the one that leaves no fingerprints, only the quiet certainty in their mind that something was always watching them. And here is the final cruelty. After their fall, you may even have the choice to help them back up. By offering aid, you position yourself not only as the victor, but as the savior. They will be too humiliated to suspect you and too dependent to resist you. The game does not end with their defeat. It ends when they see no option but to align themselves with you. Machiavelli understood that real power is not in winning battles. It is in making your opponent believe their own victory led them to ruin. A false loss is only as convincing as the mask you wear when you suffer it. If there is even a flicker of calculation in your eyes, if your posture betrays confidence, if your timing feels too perfect, your entire gambit collapses. The mask must be total. You are not pretending to lose. You are living the loss in front of them. You must look like someone who has been stripped of their advantage, drained of their fight, and forced into retreat. Every detail of your behavior becomes part of the theater. In Machiavellian terms, this is not acting. It is possession. You let the role consume you until no observer, no matter how shrewd, can detect the performance. There are 3 layers to this mask: emotional display, strategic withdrawal, and narrative control. 1. Emotional display. Your enemies will measure your defeat not by the facts alone, but by your reaction to it. This is why you must give them exactly what they expect to see: disappointment, resignation, frustration, never composure. Do not overplay it. Grand gestures look suspicious. Avoid the melodrama of slamming fists, shouting, or public breakdowns. That is theater for amateurs. The most believable defeat is quiet. A pause too long before you answer. A sigh at the wrong time. An absence from a meeting you would normally attend. These are the small tells that whisper, they're broken. Your opponent will believe them because they want to believe them. Their ego fills in the rest of the story. 2. Strategic withdrawal. A false loss does not mean vanishing completely. It means reappearing in smaller, less threatening ways. You might take on unimportant work, comment less, agree more. You give them space to feel dominant. Every predator needs to feel the kill was theirs. If you linger too close to the center of the board, suspicion returns. But if you drift just far enough to appear irrelevant, they will stop looking for you. Remember, you are not running away. You are lowering your shadow until it disappears into the ground. The less presence you have, the safer their confidence becomes. 3. Narrative control. The most dangerous moment after a staged defeat is not the loss itself, but the story that spreads about it. You must control that story without looking like you're controlling it. Ideally, your version of events spreads through others, not through you. Allow allies, informants, or concerned observers to confirm your fall. Let rumors paint you as overextended, distracted, or simply unlucky. The more they see you as human and flawed, the less they imagine you as a threat. But never let the narrative turn toward pity. Pity invites rescue, and rescue puts you back in the spotlight. What you want is to be dismissed, not saved. Why the mask must be perfect? If you falter even slightly, if your actions contradict your defeat, your opponent will begin to smell the setup. They will grow cautious. The whole point of the gambit is to make them act carelessly. A single slip in your performance can trigger their survival instinct, undoing months of preparation. This is why the greatest practitioners of this tactic often rehearse it mentally long before the stage is set. They know exactly how they will act, how they will speak, even how they will breathe when the moment comes. When you wear the mask correctly, you do more than fool your opponent. You fool yourself just enough to make the illusion real. In reality, even a crafted one, is the most dangerous weapon in any game of power. A retreat is only as powerful as the moment you choose to end it. This is the part most people misunderstand. They think pretending to lose is about disappearing until the other side becomes weak or distracted, and then rushing back in with a sudden strike. But Machiavelli would warn you, a premature return can erase every advantage you've gained. The longer you stay in the shadows, the more the narrative about you crystallizes in the minds of others. If you've withdrawn, people will form stories. He's gone. She's done. They're finished. The more certain they are of your defeat, the more devastating your return will be. But this certainty must ripen. Come back too soon, and you'll only look desperate to reassert yourself, and the illusion will break. The perfect timing is not simply when you are strong again, but when they are unprepared for strength. This is an important distinction. Your recovery might happen quickly, but their guard might still be high. Wait for their vigilance to fade. Wait for their confidence to cross the line into arrogance. Think of a military commander who feigns defeat. He retreats not just to recover troops, but to draw the enemy into a false sense of dominance. He will let them drink, relax, and scatter before striking. In your personal battles, you must do the same. Not by wasting time, but by observing until the balance of awareness shifts entirely in your favor. Timing also requires an emotional calculation. If your withdrawal was from a personal relationship, you must let the other side feel the vacuum. Let them experience the ease of not having you around. Then, just when they've fully adapted to this absence, your presence will feel like an unexpected disruption, a reintroduction of tension they cannot immediately control. That's when your influence lands the hardest. In business, timing your return after a strategic retreat can turn a modest offering into a phenomenon. A brand that disappears after a scandal, only to return with a flawless product at the exact moment the public is bored with existing options, will appear almost mythic. People will talk not just about the product, but about the comeback. In this way, the narrative of loss becomes the foundation of a legend. There is also a Machiavellian subtlety here. Sometimes you never actually return in the same form. Your re-emergence is a transformation. You may pretend to lose in one domain, letting rivals believe they've won, while quietly building dominance in another area entirely. When you resurface, they'll realize they were fighting over ashes while you seized the gold elsewhere. This is the deeper power gambit. Your return is not to the same battlefield, but to a higher one they didn't even see. Your timing, then, is not just about when, but also how. Sometimes the most devastating return is not an aggressive strike, but an effortless presence. If they expected a fight, give them calm confidence instead. If they expected passivity, show them mastery. The key is that your re-emergence should never be what they rehearsed in their minds. Surprise is half the victory. And remember, the final stroke of a successful pretend defeat is to make your return look inevitable, as if it was always part of your plan. If they think you stumbled into victory by luck, they'll dismiss you. If they believe you calculated it, they'll fear you. This is the silent crown Machiavelli would place on your head, not just to win after losing, but to make the loss itself look like the seed of your triumph. Every powerful strategy carries within it a shadow, the danger of misusing it. Pretending to lose is no exception. In the wrong context, it can collapse your position rather than strengthen it, turning calculated retreat into real defeat. Machiavelli's brilliance was not just in knowing when to act, but when not to. The first danger lies in misjudging your opponent's nature. If you feign weakness against an enemy who is not arrogant but ruthless, they will not slow down. They will press forward relentlessly until your retreat leaves you cornered. This is the fatal error of assuming everyone can be baited into overconfidence. Some adversaries are more like predators than gamblers. They attack without hesitation and do not stop until the prey stops moving. In these cases, showing weakness is an invitation to annihilation. The second danger is overestimating your own capacity for recovery. Pretending to lose only works if you have the resources, mental, emotional, financial, to rebuild quietly in the shadows. If your withdrawal drains you more than it restores you, then you are not playing a gambit. You are bleeding out in private. This is why Machiavelli would insist on silent preparation long before you even think about staging a retreat. You should already know exactly what your return will look like before you begin fading from the field. Another subtle risk is that the world moves on without you. This happens more often than people realize. You retreat, imagining your absence will be noticed, even felt. But in reality, the gap closes faster than you thought. Others fill the space you left behind, with new leaders, new narratives, new structures. If you wait too long, you may find there is no battlefield left to return to, only ruins and strangers. In personal power struggles, the danger comes from emotional miscalculation. If you withdraw from a relationship, professional or intimate, you may imagine your absence will generate longing or doubt in the other person. But if their emotional detachment is stronger than you estimated, your absence will only accelerate their forgetting. Instead of returning to someone unsettled, you'll be facing someone indifferent. In Machiavellian terms, the battlefield of influence must still exist for the gambit to matter. There is also the question of audience. Pretending to lose often relies on perception. You're allowing people to believe you've been defeated. But what if the audience you need to impress is too literal-minded? They may take the loss at face value and never pay attention to your eventual return. This is why reputation management during retreat is an art form. You must allow the image of loss to form without letting it rot into the image of irrelevance. Machiavelli's writings hint at a deeper warning. This tactic is not for those addicted to validation. If you need to constantly reassure others of your worth, you will not survive the quiet phase of the gambit. The retreat will feel like death. You will rush your return, sabotage your own preparation, and break the illusion. Feigned defeat requires a level of self-control that borders on the ascetic. You must be willing to look weak, foolish, or broken in public while privately building your arsenal. Finally, there are moments when pretending to lose is not a tactical choice, but a coward's refuge. This is the most dangerous misapplication. When someone uses the language of strategy to disguise avoidance, they tell themselves they are waiting for the right moment, but in truth, they are hiding from confrontation, avoiding the discomfort of open conflict. Machiavelli would despise this. He saw retreat not as escape, but as a sharpened weapon. In short, the gambit is only as sharp as your judgment. It demands a precise reading of the opponent, the battlefield, the audience, and your own endurance. Use it when the arc of perception can be bent to your will. Avoid it when the silence of your retreat would do nothing but confirm your disappearance. Because in the end, pretending to lose is not about deception alone. It is about control. Control over timing, over image, over narrative. Without that control, you are not pretending. You are simply losing. To understand why this tactic is so devastating, you must first understand what it does to the mind, both yours and your opponent's. When you pretend to lose, you create a paradox. On the surface, you appear to be diminishing, retreating, falling apart. But beneath that surface, you are accumulating. You are gathering information, strength, and positioning while your opponent wastes theirs. This is psychological judo. You turn their momentum against them without raising a hand. For your opponent, the effect begins subtly. At first, they simply feel they are winning. Confidence swells. Vigilance drops. They start to make decisions not from caution, but from assumption. The assumption that you are no longer a threat. And when that happens, their moves grow sloppy. They take risks they would never take if they still felt your presence. This is the first crack in their armor. Overconfidence. Machiavelli understood that arrogance is not just a flaw. It is a lever. The moment someone believes they cannot lose to you, they have already begun to lose to themselves. The second effect is narrative control. People love stories, especially stories about themselves. By letting them believe the story that they have beaten you, you allow them to relax into a false ending. They think the book is closed. They stop defending the final chapters. And that is when you begin to write yourself back into the plot, not as the defeated, but as the inevitable twist. On your side, the psychology is different. Pretending to lose forces you to detach your ego from the immediate outcome. Most people can't do this. They panic when they look weak, and they rush to fix it. But if you can hold steady, if you can endure the looks, the whispers, the condescension, you will develop a rare kind of mental steel, the ability to let the surface lie while the substance transforms. You also learn patience, not the passive kind, but the weaponized kind. You begin to see time not as something you are enduring, but as something you are shaping. Every day you remain defeated, you are deepening the illusion. Every day you resist the urge to break cover, you are turning your absence into a sharpened edge. The most profound psychological shift happens at the moment of return. When you finally reveal that your loss was an illusion, the emotional effect on your opponent is twofold: shock and shame. Shock because they never saw you coming back. Shame because they realize they were manipulated into lowering their guard. This combination is lethal. It makes them doubt not just their victory, but their judgment. And here is the true beauty of the tactic. You are not simply defeating them in that moment. You are rewriting their memory of the entire conflict. They begin to question whether they ever truly won at all, or whether every step they took was part of your plan from the start. This retroactive doubt is the most enduring form of control. Because once someone loses faith in their own ability to read the game, they will never play against you the same way again. Machiavelli would tell you that in the theater of power, the mind is the first battlefield and the last one. Pretending to lose is not just a trick. It is a form of psychological siege. You surround their confidence, cut off its supply lines, and wait until it starves itself. And when you finally strike, it is not merely to win the current game. It is to ensure that in every game after, the shadow of that false defeat still haunts them, because the real victory is not in proving you are stronger. The real victory is in making them certain that they will never know how strong you truly are. In the end, the greatest warriors in history did not simply win battles. They decided when to appear and when to vanish. They understood something that the reckless never grasp. Power is not just about presence. It is about timing. When you pretend to lose, you are not bowing out. You are stepping behind the curtain, letting the lights dim so that when you re-enter, the entire stage is yours. This is not cowardice. This is choreography. You are moving according to a rhythm only you can hear. A tempo set by your strategy, not your emotions. The amateur fights to be seen. The master chooses when to be invisible. The amateur fears silence. The master lets silence speak for him. The amateur tries to crush his enemy in one blow. The master lets the enemy weaken himself with 1,000 careless moves. Disappearance is not retreat. It is the sharpening of the blade, and pretending to lose is not submission. It is the shaping of the battlefield so that by the time you decide to strike, the victory is already written. History is filled with those who played this long game. Leaders who feigned defeat to lure their enemies into overextension. Negotiators who appeared desperate only to make the other side commit before revealing their leverage. Thinkers who let their rivals believe they had won the argument, only to return with a single devastating truth that overturned everything. You must understand, the goal is not to humiliate them. Humiliation breeds vengeance. The goal is to reframe their understanding of you so completely that they stop thinking of you as an opponent altogether. Once that happens, they will underestimate you forever. And in the realm of power, underestimation is the sweetest poison you can slip into someone's cup. But there is a cost to this path. It will test your discipline. It will ask you to swallow your pride. It will force you to endure moments when the world believes you are broken, when friends doubt you, when enemies celebrate your end. That is when you must remember, they are not celebrating your end. They are celebrating the part of the story you allowed them to read. The rest is still being written. And here is the last truth, the one Machiavelli would whisper in the dim candlelight after all the feasts and victories were over. Power is not about always winning. It is about controlling the perception of winning and losing. If you can master the art of pretending to lose, you will never be truly beaten. Because even in defeat, you will be laying the foundation for your return. Even in the ashes, you will be building the fire that will consume them. So vanish when you must. Appear when it matters. And when the time comes, let them see that the loss they celebrated was only the first step in the victory you had planned all along. The greatest victory is not in striking hard. It is in striking last.